Welcome to Birth Worker Magic. I'm your co-host, Alicia Fishbein, and today we have with us the marvelous Gail Tully. Hi, Gail.
Hi, Alicia. I'm so glad to be here with you. And this
So
is magical.
I agree. I'm so grateful. And let me just tell you a little bit about Gail. Gail Tully is a midwife, and she has created a new paradigm for the future of birth with spinning babies. Once a doula trainer, she's now part of a worldwide movement that mentors midwives and doulas. And Gail has founded one of the nation's largest doula nonprofits, a hospital doula program. And this is probably how you know her best, Spinning Babies, a leading online source for physiologic birth. Gail is also a wife and mother and a grandmother, and she lives in Minneapolis near some of her 10 grandchildren. Gail, the magic you're going to talk about today is activating physiology, right?
It is activating physiology. Spinning babies gives the birth worker and the parent keys to activate their physiology. In pregnancy and in labor, they can use it throughout. And often, especially in a birth, when one birth worker, maybe it's the nurse, knows spinning babies, but maybe the doctor doesn't. Maybe the doula knows spinning babies, but the nurse doesn't. Somebody knows some spinning babies. So the other birth professional will say, come and do your magic.
Yes, and magic it is for sure. And I'm just going to urge all of you to, whenever you have the opportunity, to get out there and take a spinning babies training, whether online or in person, ideally. But it is so important as you build your foundation as a doula. It's vital what you're going to learn.
What activating physiology means is strengthening and enhancing the connections that are already there between the pregnant person and their baby, the birthing couple, the birth team. All these connections are enhanced, but especially the connection inside the body with the fascia, which is the connective tissue that connects the uterus to the pelvis, all the muscles and ligaments. And when they are all optimized, and they don't have to be perfect, they just, they're all lined up. So baby's lined up with the pelvis and then birth flows as if by magic, but
Yes,
it's really physiology.
love it.
As other organizations go around the United States, they're finding that most hospital labor and delivery nurses are familiar with the name spinning babies. Some of them don't quite know what it is. Some people think, oh, I know spinning babies. You do pelvic tilts, you get on your hands and knees. Spinning babies does something else. It asks, where's baby? Is that backwards for you?
Perfect.
Okay. So where's baby in the pelvis? And I'll tell you, as I tried to answer a question in the 1980s, I started my question, what makes birth easier? Particularly, what makes birth easier when the baby's forehead is in the front of the pelvis? Because the baby's shape of the baby's head is this little forehead can fit in the pelvis like a heel in your shoe. And the heel in your shoe doesn't turn. But the back of baby's head is nice and round, and that turns in the pelvis. And so if we can help baby's chin to tuck close to their chest, then we're aiming this round part of the head into the pelvis. How do we do that? We don't do it. The baby does it. And the baby will naturally flex its head and rotate in the pelvis when it's all in this flexed little tiniest shape the baby can be, like a little bit of a tube shape through the pelvis. And that's by attending to the anatomy, because our birthing body already has this innate ability, but our furniture, our shoes, our cars, modern life takes away our body's natural abilities by causing tensions and torsions and turning and twisting the ligaments and the joints of the pelvis. So spinning babies is about how to restore our body balance and allow the baby to have the room. So we ask a couple of questions. Where's baby? Which means what position? How's baby rotating? How high or low has baby engaged? And then let's make room for baby.
Gail, can we talk for just a moment about lifestyle that leads to this tension in our bodies? Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about why is it that sitting and shoes and riding in cars that it impacts our body for birth?
Yeah. We have gravity. We live in a field of gravity. So we're always being pulled down. So we have that going on. That's a force of gravity that's always going on. And then we have habits of posture, habits of movement. So for instance, in the 1970s, it became cool to slouch and cross our legs. Before the 1970s, your grandmother would never allow you to sit back like James Dean in your chair. You had to sit up like a lady. Well, I'll tell you, in the 1970s, women didn't want to be ladies. They wanted to be, have more power. And so we got it mixed up that doing anything against the lady stereotypes gave us power. And we sat now slouching on our sacrums. I have a cardboard pelvis. I got this pelvis in Penny Simpkins' office years ago, and she put the sticker, "We can do it," on here. And we were going to show a woman who had a narrow pelvis how fetal alignment was going to help. Like if her baby was posterior, it wouldn't fit in her particular pelvis. But by turning to the side and helping her baby flex, her baby could get through her pelvis and then do the rotations to fit. So this is the pelvis I have with that beautiful history. And we have a little we have a little paper tailbone and sacrum. And if you put your hand on the back of your pelvis, those listening, you can feel your own sacrum here at the bottom of your spine. And we used to sit on our sits bones, but now we're trained to sit back on our tailbones. And that distorts our pelvic floor. It shortens our pelvic floor as well as some of the other habits we have in modern life. And now baby has a very constricted buttonhole to try to fit through. It can be tight and short and overworked. And what we're asking people to do is to create long, supple muscles that function and respond to birth, so that now we have natural ability, like just as natural as a river fitting through its banks, to flow. And we get comfort. So we're activating the physiology by overcoming shoes and cars and things that settle us into a distorted shape and space inside our body. And now we are realigning with gravity. We do it with daily activities of stretching very slowly, not vigorous exercise. You can do vigorous exercise, but some people really enjoy that. But if you don't balance it with long, supple muscles, you end up short and tight. And then you can get more pain in labor. You can get more breech positions if your abs are so tight for your first baby. And just like if in exercise or car accidents, a sudden turn and stop will cause twists in the uterus, and then baby has to adjust to that shape.
So if you, for instance, if a mother plays a lot of stop and start sports like soccer or there's all kind of stop and start, right? And twist.
Well, I'll tell you a story. My dear niece was a great softball player, and she so enjoyed her Thursday night softball, and she played into her 6 months of her first pregnancy. And so she'd swing the bat and then run to the base because she was good, right? So she often, but that sudden swing stop, and her baby went sideways in her womb, right up to close to the time where she was expected to give birth. And we tried some of the things that I knew in those days, which includes going upside down in forward leaning inversion to help the uterus reset its ligaments. In fact, I'll show you a picture of that. And actually, it didn't work because I didn't have all the details worked out yet. And we only did one forward leaning inversion and it wasn't enough. So she did some body work, and the next day the baby went head down, and she had a very straightforward birth. But she would have had to have a cesarean if she hadn't had a vertical baby, right? Head down is ideal. Breech will fit, but you need a provider. And we promote Carol Phillips' forward leaning inversion to help babies get into an ideal head down position. Now, if they're already head down, it's still helpful. We just do fewer and shorter times. It's not being upside down that helps the baby. It's coming up again. It's going down to stretch the ligaments and coming up to reset the ligaments.
It's kind of like reparking the car too. Baby has an opportunity to repark the car, move there, like backing out of a parking space.
Yes. Yes. And the uterus would then be the car. So why are we blaming the passenger, right? Babies don't have a steering wheel. They're dependent on the ligaments and the muscles around the uterus that hold the uterus in place. And we can adapt those muscles and ligaments and joints of the pelvis, ideally, into optimal states to help baby have the most room, most expansive room to fit head down.
Does every woman need this? Every modern woman?
Well, let's say this. Some women are addressing it with maybe a gentle and appropriately aligned prenatal yoga. I would say not every prenatal yoga, but prenatal yoga is probably your best bet to overcome modern postures and habits. So I saw a post recently that said Ina May recommended 300 squats a day. Well, that line has gone from 50 squats a day to 500 squats a day. And people will go onto a gym floor and do those squats. And that is not at all the experience of the women of the farm in Tennessee in the 70s that Ina May was writing about. These were women that walked a great deal. I've been on the farm. If you walked to the swimming hole, you walked a mile. If you walked over to the store, you had a nice walk on the dirt. You know, it was not cement. People were not wearing high heels. They were not driving around in cars. And if you were on a long walk and you had to go to the bathroom, you squatted in the woods. And a lot of people use outhouses. And you squatted to play with children because there were no benches around. People lived in small places and they did a lot of their activities outside. And so squatting was a natural part of living, not something you did all at once in 1 hour, which is a difference in how your body is stretching and opening, right? You're walking in soft shoes on uneven ground. So your ankles are always in motion, a little bit here and a little bit there. Your hips are getting lots of nice motion every day. And you're eating a lot of whole foods. You're not eating sugar because it's not available. That was the life of the farm, a little bit of sweets, but it was not like today in the grocery store.
Hunter-gatherer lifestyle in terms of their diet.
Yeah, yeah. And they had fantastic social support and belief in birth. They had patient midwives, but patience turns to neglect if we don't understand physiology.
Oh, tell me more about that, Gail.
We say this person had interventions at the hospital because they didn't give them enough time, right? Or they didn't get them off their back. And as a home birth midwife, quite a number of the people that I got to help had births like that in the hospital where they felt pressure and they felt unable to have freedom of movement. And they came home where they had freedom of time and freedom of movement. And if the pelvis still had the issues of twists or torsions or tensions or a small outlet, then we had to face the same seeming obstacle, right? Like hold your breath and push. That's a technique that I did not recommend as a routine, right? In fact, I think holding your breath and pushing is counterindicated for second stage in most of the time. When there's space for the baby, it interferes with the work of the pelvic floor. There's a typical pause before spontaneous pushing, a latent phase, a gentle onset. Not for everybody. Some people go right into pushing. If they need this gentle start for their pelvic floor, their baby, their situation, then nature gives it to them. Their body gives it to them. The pelvic floor starts a peristalsis around the baby's head. So if my hands were the pelvic floor, I would start this gentle movement, and then we'd pause, and then a gentle movement, and I would work the baby down. And then the baby would turn for the chest, and we would do the head is born, and then here comes the baby coming out. So breathing the baby out is available when there's room for the baby. We make room with upright positions. We make room with our breath. We make room with time a little bit. And that works for most people. Spinning Babies is designed for when our favorite things don't work. What do we do? Let's not use force. Let's activate the physiology by preventively releasing tension and torsion, supporting what's too loose, sometimes by helping release what's too tight. What's too loose naturally normalizes itself. So we've achieved a balance of tension and looseness, not too tight, not too loose, and not too twisty. Yeah. And so birth then happens spontaneously when it's not interfered with. Sometimes somebody has a situation that couldn't be overcome, like the bones are tight at the bottom of the pelvis. They're going to have to hold their breath and push. So we've attended everything else, but we found something that is a little bit unique to that person. And now we have to address that. Or, one person had a beautiful labor, pushed until we saw the head. She was going for a VBAC. And the baby wasn't coming any farther than this little peak of the head. And we gave rest, we gave patience, we gave food, we removed the midwife because there was a midwife dystocia of being exhausted. We had beautiful support with doulas and very skilled doulas that had lots of birth experience. A wonderful partner, a wonderful birth center. Everything was ideal for a VBAC. And the baby couldn't come in all the squatting and all the asymmetrical hips and the releases. We weren't having a baby. Well, I was a substitute midwife. I looked at her history, but something was missing. Something very vital was missing from her history. We transferred to the hospital and we were waiting for the doctor to come in and probably do a cesarean. But the mother was still very eager to try. So now in the hospital bed, we tried squatting and asymmetrical pushing and all kinds of things. And then at the end, the mother turned to me and said, "Do you think it's the metal plates in my sacrum that are stopping it from opening?" This wasn't in her chart. Nobody had told me. Of course, the metal plate screwed her sacrum so that it couldn't open in the path of the baby. Wow. So she had a necessary cesarean. Well, tension can become as if it's metal plates, but if there is no metal plates, we can release that tension with the skilled knowledge of very advanced body workers,
Wow.
but
That's
they're available.
Gail, just to talk about, because spinning babies can be magic. And it sounds to me like the best approach would be beginning prenatally. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
If we think early in pregnancy, we have a uterus, right? But if we have a twist in the uterus, now the baby's head can't go down there, but we don't know it in second trimester because nobody's expecting the baby to be head down in second trimester, and it's okay if they're not. If the baby's not head down in second trimester, we still, people say, well, you still have time, but it's not time that brings the baby down, it's gravity. And so if by 28 weeks, 30 weeks, 32 weeks, we don't have a head down baby, it might be because there was this sudden swing and stop in gravity, a fender bender, repetitive sports behavior, repetitive work. One woman threw hay bales because she was a farmer. And that creates a twist again and again and again. And her uterus was shaped like this. So we go upside down, give the ligaments a stretch, and come back up. And the uterus now has room for baby to turn head down. And some people it's once, and some people it's many times, and many other techniques of stretch. And so our birth prep class goes into this in detail and teaches parents. And the nice thing is the partner, whether it's the life partner or the birth partner or both, is a fantastic helper and helps. And they're simple enough if they take the time to read the directions out loud and give it a try a couple of times. They're simple enough to do at home themselves from second trimester, third trimester, in labor.
So, Gail, distill it down for us. I know that's a lot to do, but if you just had to choose a handful of things for moms to be doing in pregnancy, and then we can move to birth a little later.
Yeah.
What can moms be doing? What can birth workers?
So we're thinking about the birth anatomy around the uterus. So the rib cage, the shoulders, actually along the jaw, that is their TMJ, tight hips, an old history of a sprained ankle, pain when somebody walks or they lay down too long. That stitch in the round ligament when somebody is halfway through pregnancy, they roll over and they get a very piercing pain sometimes in their lower side. These are invitations to do daily activities. So we go in 3 areas: daily activities to bring suppleness and length to the muscles and address what's in your body now. Rest smart, which are called maternal positioning in the field, in the birth field. Maternity care calls it maternal positioning. We called it rest smart because the people that come to spinning babies want to be smart about what they're doing. And so they're aligning with gravity as they sit up on their sits bones, use birth balls, rest with a pillow between knees and ankles both. So they're addressing their suppleness, they're resting smart so they don't lose their suppleness in slouching. And then we're restoring balance, the innate balance that they have in their body. It's in the DNA, it's in the cells, it's in our history. How do we make it optimal? And we do that with the 3 balances at Spinning Babies. It's not just going to the chiropractor, it's also addressing soft tissues, which are ligaments and muscles and the fascia, the connective tissue throughout the body. What's above, below, in front and in back, and off to the side. And therefore, stretches of all sorts, windmills and triangle pose and, all these different things help. But we have some special things to restore balance. Anybody can use it as long as they don't have contraindications. So we invite people to go look at the page of forward leaning inversion before they go upside down There's a lot of miseducation out on the internet about how to go upside down and how long to do it and etc. Daily activities of suppleness, resting smart, and restoring balance. It's a 3-phase addressing of our anatomy. It can be self-care. We can do it with a partner, or we can go find a body worker. We have aware practitioners, and we can have the guidance, educational guidance of a certified parent educator, a spinning baby certified parent educator. We're trying to get the message out so that parents can have efficacy. They can have autonomy in their bodies and feel their bodies. What happens is comfort comes pretty fast. And that's a reinforcement that something's going right. Right?
Gail, I think it's so empowering because it lets you become aware that there is so much you can do to prepare to help ensure that your labor is as comfortable as it can be. Tell us about these balancing activities. You named the forward leaning inversion. What are the others that you would recommend?
Forward leaning inversion. Well, first we do daily activities. So we open up our bodies. We're doing a whole range of motion, right? This is out of a little book that's actually for the birth practitioner called the Spinning Babies Quick Reference, which outlines our professional workshop, and it reminds them what they learned. Orthobionomy, and our friend Jenny Blythe, one of our approved trainers, brings us the jiggle. It's one little technique out of the background of orthobionomy, and it is now gaining popularity. It's causing oscillation of the tissues. So oscillation is a vibration that, if this was a water balloon, would not cause sloshing. It's not shaking. It's oscillation, and it's pretty gentle. And we're just getting a jiggle through the tissues. So tip number 1 for magic is you can do it to your own hip and buttocks. You can have your partner jiggle your bottom, just like you're trying to put a newborn to sleep, right? Maybe not a newborn, but maybe a 3-month-old. We're jiggling their butt, and they just fall asleep, because relaxing the pelvis area is going to help our parasympathetics. The uterus has nerves of the parasympathetics, rest and digest. And so this takes us out of the stress and creates an environment. Now we're not jiggling the uterus. This is my balloon. Now, right now it's a buttocks. Okay, it's a butt, right? But the uterus also has these endings of the nerves to activate the parasympathetics and to help us feel calm, rested, and see the good in life, right? It takes us out of the stress, and it creates a beautiful environment for our babies to grow and swallow the amniotic fluid. And so their growth is ideal. Let's not mix up a big baby is harder to give birth to. We're not talking about trying to keep babies small to make birth easier. That's a 1950s myth that persists. And we want good food, we want good movement, and we want space for babies' neurological health and their own nervous system development. So the more we can activate our parasympathetics at night before we fall asleep, the nicer the baby's growth experience is in the womb. The nicer our gestational experience is as the person carrying the baby. So we do the jiggle. And then when we're done with the jiggle, well, I mean, you get jiggled when you can, right? And there's a person in position. Their knee is on a pillow. Their foot is on the curve of the other knee. They're cozy, and their partner is giving their butt a jiggle. Okay. If you do nothing else, that is so yummy. Then Dr. Carol Phillips teaches us the forward leaning inversion, and we do it very carefully with help. I want people to go down one hand at a time and we stop at the safety position and then one hand, two hands, elbow, elbow. And then we come up with help so that we're hanging on to that shoulder. We'd want to prevent a fall, right? One a day, second and third trimester, unless there's a particular issue, and go to the website for people who have different shaped uteruses or twins or breech. People with twins and breech can do this, but you might pay attention a little bit. And then the sideline release is also a Dr. Carol Phillips technique, and we recommend it, and we have refined it based on experience of thousands of people. And this is really a wonderful way to prepare for a comfortable labor, or if someone's saying, maybe your baby's not coming, we should do a cesarean, we've tried Pitocin, all that stuff. Oh no, let's try this in pregnancy, every few days, every week. Let's try it early in labor. And then if at all labor stalls out, you feel too much pain, somebody says your baby's posterior or your baby's stuck, then this sideline release makes the best room in the pelvis, helps baby rotate, and you could have a baby quite soon afterwards. There's other techniques for balance. If somebody does have TMJ, if someone has a locked pelvis, which means their bones aren't moving, but not because they have metal plates in them, but because something's too tight in their joints, there are more techniques that we teach in our wear practitioner workshop, in our birth skills, in our spinning babies workshop for professionals. Or there are a few birth workers that really know pregnancy and the ligaments to the sacrum, and those sometimes need to be addressed.
This is okay, Gail. So this is the lead up. These are the things a birth worker can teach to her client so that she's ready for labor. And then in labor, how would we utilize these tools in early labor, active labor?
So we treat early labor like it's any other day. We do our stretches and our balances any given day of pregnancy. So now if we have a slow start to labor, like most of us find delicious, then we can decide, do we want to go through a session of our anatomy top to bottom, front to back, give everything a little release and add comfort. And also remember, it helps the mind. The parasympathetics in the body give us happier, more confident thoughts. Faster than confident thoughts change our body's ability to give birth. Do you understand? We change our psychology with our physiology fast, but we change our physiology with our psychology with a lot of work and sometimes decades, right? And so we address our physiology in early labor if we have the time. Some people's early labor starts quick. If there's more pain than we expect, if it looks like we're in transition because it hurts so much and we're shaking and we maybe feel like vomiting, and then they tell us we're 2 centimeters dilated, that's an imbalance. Something isn't matching. The story doesn't match. That's an invitation to balance. And suddenly the pain comes down, and now our body is having milder, more gentle contractions at 2 centimeters, and then building up with more grace and flow. And if again something happens later in labor, we can return to the 3 balances and address, where do we need space? We ask, how can we help make room for baby? And then baby will tuck their chin on their own and rotate into position.
How do you know which activities to use in labor, Gail?
We don't always. So the parent themselves learns a set of activities, and they can do those activities. And that's going to help 80% of the people 80% of the time. If they're lucky to have a labor and delivery nurse that's had training, or a doula that's had training, and really gets the paradigm, they've gotten out of, oh, you just need more pain, you just need more time, or we need to have faster contraction, so we'll do the pit, or we'll or you have to let go of fear to do this, and then they wait for those things to happen. That's not an informed professional. We activate the physiology. Then we trust that the body and the baby know. We're simply removing obstacles to our happiness. And then the happiness, the ability to give birth, is innate. So we don't have to know everything. This is the logical brain. Let's be in our bodies and give our bodies the advantage of spaciousness, flexibility and stability and balance, and the rest will flow. If we have a special need, we might need a special person that knows how to address that need, that ligament. There's a ligament that attaches the sits bones to the tailbone, for instance, the sacrum area. That might need to be released. That can happen. And people can go search this on my website. The Spinning Babies website has enough information to reduce suffering and save lives all across the world. It's free, but you have to pour a cup of tea and do a search. You have to use the search bar. And or if you want it spelled out for you, we have ebooks and we have courses online that'll spell it out for you. We have a certified parent educator. They'll take you through the general prep and answer questions. We have aware practitioners that can do the body work.
You also need, I think, the desire and a little bit of courage, because to do a sacrotuberous ligament release for the first time is a little scary. And
if you're a practitioner,
well, I've done it before at a labor, and it just the first time I did it, I remember that I was, because we couldn't get anybody else, like a chiropractor, to come, and so she walked me through it on the phone. This was,
oh my.
but anyway, all this to
Good for
say,
you.
doing any of these things for the first time can be a little scary. So it's just mustering up the courage and asking your client if they're willing to try this and giving it a whirl.
You know, that brings it into the name of this talk. You know, is it magic? Is it magic? Go do your magic. And what I hear from doulas and nurses and midwives in the hospital is when a birth is taking a long time or there's a lot of pain, and they will find the let's say it's a nurse, a labor and delivery nurse. She'll find another labor and delivery nurse in that hospital that knows spinning babies. And they'll say, go and do your magic with this person, right? Or the doctor will say to the nurse, go do your magic. If they don't have a nurse in the hospital, they might ask the doula. You know, they'll know a doula has been. Now, the doula should look up the license agreements on how they do this, but you certainly can learn these techniques and use them with any birthing person. That's the agreement. It's not my agreement that they can promote their business with my brand. They have to follow a license to do that. But everybody who learns this can apply it. And that seems like magic. They don't want to know, but it's really physiology. Are we doing magic here, or are we doing physiology? Let me put it this way. Are we doing magic here, or do we simply know something about physiology that hasn't been taught in other places? Spinning babies is a new lens on birth because it's a new way of looking at physiology for the birth worker. Some of the body workers have known this, but they didn't know how to translate it to birth worker talk. The gift of spinning babies is two things. One, I translate it to the birth worker, and I ask the important questions that helps awaken the birth worker's mind. Where's baby? How do we make space for baby? The more you know, the more you can answer those simple questions. The thing that had never existed before spinning babies, let me see if I can find a picture of that, is yeah. What never existed before spinning babies is asking where in the pelvis is baby and how do we open these different diameters? There's different shapes here. And people have had tips on what's a good position to engage baby, what's a good position to push out a baby. But a lot of times they're random and people don't know how to pick those positions. And so baby's not in the pelvis and the doula is having the mother squat. And they're actually closing the door on engagement without knowing it. So we systemized releasing the anatomy, choosing the birth position. Now we have easier birth. The cesarean rates are going down into the teens for hospital after hospital after hospital who's applying spinning babies.
Yeah, that's an amazing resource. I've got to tell you, I had that in my bag for years. And
Yeah, this little book.
yes, because when it's 3 in the morning and your brain isn't working properly, this is your second brain for you. It's so brilliant.
It's just, and if you don't do the research on the website or the course, you won't understand it. It won't be enough to be safe or to be clever, but it's a reminder.
It is. And I just want to put in a plug for spinning babies. Everybody ought to go. I've been a couple of times in my career. I loved it. And I feel like you always need a refresh in the physiology and in the techniques. And it's almost something you could go to every year or two, simply because then it's always in your mind. Your hands are ready to go and nimble.
Every few years, it's almost a new workshop. It follows the similar course, but our understanding of physiology grows and our techniques improve. And we learn from our community how to be safer and how to be more aligned, how to do it better.
That is something I love about you. You have shape shifted over the years, Gail. Sometimes taking something away, adding something in, and that's beautiful. I love the ability to say we don't know everything, and we're constantly refining and perfecting.
I teach because I want to learn.
I love that. Oh, that's my favorite, Gail. We're always telling the doulas we train, stay hungry and stay humble.
Yeah, scientific method means we have to be open in our curiosity.
Absolutely.
It's not evidence-based if we're not open-minded. And first of all, they don't look for evidence for physiology. The idea of research is to prove things that are not physiological are not going to harm human beings. There's no money in physiology. Why would they put money into researching it? There are definitely midwives, nurses, and doctors who are very interested in researching physiology, and spinning babies has been observed and datified. Hospitals are keeping their stats, and there's lots of retrospective qualitative analysis from midwives who've used spinning babies, especially in Europe. And now it's being systematically studied as a whole approach right now. And so we'll be seeing that research published in a while. It takes a while.
So that's exciting, Gail. That's the next big step for you guys. I love that.
Yeah, it's a long time in coming, and it takes such a dedicated team for years. What happens is it's easier to do a qualitative or a quality improvement pilot study, which then isn't the same as research, but you don't need the investment to do it. And we have a wonderful couple of poster presentations showing spinning babies is reducing cesarean rates around the world, but hospital after hospital, they're reducing it 35%, 45% lower than that hospital had. And sometimes under 10%. But, to be honest, it's not financially feasible for a hospital to have an under 10% cesarean rate. They cannot support their hospital. And
About that. That is so true.
yeah. So if the setting that a person with a healthy pregnancy chooses is financially dependent on interventions, Don't you think that their chance of having interventions is higher than if they're in a birth center or home setting that has no investment on having a certain cesarean rate to sustain them? Now, the industrial complex has created cesarean rates of 30% and higher, even 80% in some places. And that means a loss of physiological birth skills. The doctor can want to support someone's choice for physiological birth and not have the skills or the know-how to do it because they haven't seen it.
So we need OBs in spinning babies. We need OBs seeing magic birth as well.
And they're taking spinning babies more and more. I had a wonderful physician that's moved me so much. She took one of my classes in Oregon because she was going to move to rural Alaska. And the only cesareans possible for women giving birth at where she was going was to get in an airplane and fly 200 miles away. And that's dangerous in and of itself. So she wanted the Spinning Babies workshop to protect her practice, her families, to protect the births she was assisting with more skills. Yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing to see more practitioners feel that kind of that level of responsibility for what's to take place in birth? I mean,
We see that in other parts of the world. You know, I was studying breech in the United Kingdom, and breech vaginal birth, when the baby is coming butt first, reduced in its availability all over the world, right? And so all as many as 90% or 95% of breech babies were born by cesarean. Only if the baby was coming way too fast and they couldn't have time for cesarean was the baby born vaginally, or that parent decided to stay home and find a midwife that knew breech birth, which is pretty unusual. The doctors and midwives of the UK said, we are having requests from parents for breech vaginal birth. We need to grow our skills. Go to America for the same discussion. Parents are requesting breech birth, how dangerous and stupid they are. We can't, what do they think? We have to stop this.
gosh,
That's
yeah.
the difference in culture in the two countries. It's the parents' demand that's shifting the culture over here. And it is the grassroots doctors and midwives that are growing breech vaginal birth skills outside of the hospitals. But the hospitals will catch up with it.
I hope so. I know we can be so grateful for people like Stu Fishbein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Dr. Frank Leuven really gave us the key in how the breech baby rotates and is born, and when to help and when we don't have to touch. It was Dr. Frank Leuven, who was chief of staff in Frankfurt for the University Hospital, and he did all the breech vaginal births in the region, his team, and they never quit doing breech births. And so they have a lineage of skills from obstetrical. And then he discovered, breech birth would be safer on hands and knees. And now, because midwives will do hands and knees births, there was a merging of professions. And whenever you have lateral knowledge come together, you have excitement, energy, and skills increase.
Yeah. That is what we need. We need more of that connection between the world of midwifery and the world of obstetrics.
Yes. Yes. Connection is where our healing is. Connection is where love is. It's not us against them. That's a sympathetic nervous system self-protection. And where peace is where birth is. Where birth is where peace is. And that's in our parasympathetics and our vagal nerve connections.
That's so beautiful, Gail. I love how you managed to bring it full circle to love. A baby is created in love, a baby is born in love.
Well, that's our ideal, right? And so many people don't have that opportunity. And yet activating the parasympathetics restores love.
Mm.
So if if a baby wasn't conceived in love, love can be restored by activating the parasympathetics now. If a baby is gestating with a loving mother, but the world outside her door is dangerous from racism, from war, from crime, then restoring the inner environment of the body is available with activating the physiology, the parasympathetics. The three balances will create a lovely internal environment for a baby to grow. Let me share with you and the doulas and the mothers too. Before COVID, when we had a Spinning Babies workshop, we would bring in a pregnant mom. And I won't say who this was, but we were teaching long ago, far away. And the doulas brought in a mother who was quite close to her due date, maybe 37 weeks. Her baby was head down, but she was not happy with pregnancy. She was not comfortable. And one of the first things she said to the group of doulas who were taking the Spinning Babies classes, "This little brat kept me up all night kicking. I'm having an epidural as soon as I walk in the hospital." And sometimes the epidural is a really great tool. But in this case, she stated it as a way to separate herself from her experience, from her body, from her baby. She was saying sentences of stress and separation when she arrived. She was not happy with what was about to happen because the lens of her mind was in her sympathetic nervous system. So our eyes went, I mean, you could see across the group of doulas, they're like, oh my. So we went ahead and we did a little exercise for her to feel her own baby's contours and figure out her baby's position in her womb, because she was quite far along in pregnancy. So she could find the baby's back and where the baby's feet were kicking and get a sense of the baby inside her body. And then we did the exercises for comfort and release and balance. And we showed the doulas all the things that we just recommended to you. And at the end of it, she was glowing with calm and peace and inner peace because her parasympathetics were activated. We changed the internal environment to one of danger and caution into one of acceptance and joy. And then we had another event, a public event that night on the beach on what's called belly mapping method. And she came to that with her partner and she had a very enjoyable time. And I have a picture of her glowing. And then her doula contacted us a couple of weeks later and said she had a natural birth and her bonding was great. And she had even said the next day after going through these exercises, she talked about her little angel inside.
Gail.
So her relationship with her baby changed because her relationship inside her own body was uplifted. And that's the power of physiology.
That is, our bodies are such a gift, aren't they?
Mm.
And I always teach my kids about when they're spinning emotionally. That's what
Yeah.
we do, a body thing to break the spin. And
Yes, to feel our bodies, to have compassion for the message that our body's giving us. It's not an enemy, it's our teacher. It's also our own inner baby asking us to be nurtured.
yes, I love that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Just
So Spinning Babies unwraps that present, helps us be present, and then our innate abilities naturally blossom.
yes. I love that. Spinning Babies allows the body to do its own magic.
Thanks for bringing it back to magic, because it feels like magic.
Gail, I know it's a special offer for us. Can you tell our listeners about what that offer is?
We're putting in PDF form the steps to activating your parasympathetics so that your birth can be enhanced, and then you know where to go in the Spinning Babies website. So you can get free information.
Beautiful. Oh, that's going to be so helpful. That's the kind of thing you can laminate and pop into your birth bag.
Oh, it'll be great for that.
And Gail, I have one final question for you. If you could wave a magic wand and go back to your first year as a birth worker, what would you love to tell yourself?
Mm. My first year as a birth worker, I would say, was with my friend who was giving birth in her living room, and the midwife was late, and we knew that my friend was having a breech birth. And I had been there to take a movie. This was in the time of reel-to-reel movies, 1983. And I would say that everything I needed to know was given to me, because I think I was being guided and taught in a way, prepared for the work that I was going to do. And this beautiful birth of a 7-pound breech baby, my friend's living room. I had spiritual midwifery open to the pictures of a breech birth and tucked under my friend's knee, who was kneeling over her table. So her knee was the book opener prop.
Wow.
And out emerged this loaf of bread that looked like a loaf of bread coming out of her because it was the baby's torso. And then the baby was born, fortunately, very well, but through prayer and meditation and reading, we were prepared that this was the right thing for her to do. Her only other option was a cesarean, a 10-day hospital stay, and her husband wasn't allowed to come into the hospital. That was her other option. So by closing physiology from women, women find other avenues to live their lives, and birth is part of life.
And sometimes that closed door is the best thing. It feels like the worst thing in the moment.
Mm.
Turns out it takes us where we need to be.
That is such wisdom. Let's just take a breath with that wisdom, because so many listeners are feeling like the doors are closed to them. And simply by stepping into the unknown, doors are opened. And the unknown isn't a bad place to be. With our physiology intact and activated, we're able to step into the unknown with courage and confidence. It's there for each of us. It's there for each of us. We remove the obstacle and happiness remains.
And Gail, you discovered something so important about yourself at that birth when you found yourself in the unexpected position of being the only person to be able to support this mother. You learned that you had wisdom and knowledge that you could tap into.
I would say I learned to get myself out of the way and let that wisdom come, because for me, it was a very divine experience. There was, yes, it was actually where I even heard the baby communicating to me. And I looked around and I saw that the father, mother, and grandmother couldn't hear the baby. It was a very transcendent experience. Unlike most, I mean, birth is always a miracle, but this one was really setting the stage for understanding not only the movements of the baby for spontaneous birth, but also understanding the connections at every level of our being. I had gotten to experience that kind of multi-level experience of birth with my own birth. I had my baby at 17 years old, and the sense of all levels, spiritual, physical, was very present for me. I felt very supported, actually. And then the first baby I got to catch, which of course she was born spontaneously, gave me that message. And after a while, I realized that kind of spontaneous ease wasn't available just because people wanted it. There is a myth that birth is easy if you remove your mental obstacles and you want a natural birth or you want a easier birth, that you'll have one. And there is an aspect of mind-body connection. But don't forget the body in that. The body is our teacher. The body is our source of, we're given a body and all the hormones and all of the connective tissue to work in unity. But our society is always confronting that with improper beliefs, yes, but also lack of movement or range of movement, tensions, torsions. So we restore our inner balance, not too tight, not too twisty, not too loose. And then we see function. What we're talking about is restoring birth function with better understanding of physiology. That's the magic.